Thank goodness you're here. Deadloch and expeditions around the world. This is Staying In.
We've all been on our holidays recently, haven't we?
Welcome back. Hello.
Welcome back, everyone.
The whole Staying In crew. I mean, Pete's on his holiday as we speak.
Yep, on his brat summer.
It's brat summer.
But we've all been on various holidays, some abroad, some at home.
How's everyone dealing with the jet lag?
Yeah. Listener, who sounds the most tanned?
Oh, hold on. Let's. What phrase can we all say? I know what to say. So every evening at the place where I was staying, they had a little kids club, which Hugo absolutely loved. And every time they went to go and play a song at the kids club, they would say "Uno, dos, tres, musica." A bit more louder and shoutier than I was saying it. But if we use that as the phrase, "Uno, dos, tres, musica," and we'll see who sounds the most tanned. So, Kris, do you want to go first?
Certainly. Uno, dos, tres, musica.
Oh, okay. Dan?
Uno, dos, tres, musica.
This is Staying In.
I tried to really sell my holiday in that.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah. Unos, dos, tres, musica. Have you ever been on holiday, right? And you've seen that family or that couple or that person sprinting through the airport or sprinting to catch the transfer and being all flustered, and you look out you're either sitting at the cafe or you're looking out the window of the coach, and you're just like, you look to each other, whoever you're with, and you just go, thank God I'm not that person.
Yeah. I mean, our colleague Pete has probably been on the receiving end of that numerous times.
Well, this holiday, for the very first time, me, my wife, and my child were that group of people. Our airport transfer was due to be leaving at 8:15. They respectfully ask you to be at the hotel reception at 8 o'clock. For reasons I don't feel I need to go into explain. My wife comes in to where I was sleeping at the hotel and says, "Sam, it's 8 minutes past 8. We've slept in."
Proper Home Alone.
Well, we need to go.
We've all got the music in our head right now.
And it was the most Home Alone thing. Like luckily we packed a 90% pack the night before.
Yeah.
So all I had to do was literally, and when I mean literally, had one arm on the drawer where you on the table in the bedroom where we used to get ready, and just scooped it all into the case and slammed it down.
What's an image? Everything's there. Your lamp. Just everything's gone in the suitcase. Too late to check.
Crash.
I didn't even have time to change out my pajamas. I just literally threw on a top and had my pajama shorts on. And
sorry, Sam. You strike me as the person who the night before their holiday, I imagine you're already in your swimming trunks.
They were kind of swimming trunky. And we had to send my wife and my son off to go and placate the driver. And obviously, being in a foreign country, it's very difficult. You're either going to get a driver who's really understanding and helpful, or not, and it's going to be very, very difficult to translate. We're really, really sorry, but we just slept in. We did not mean to hold you up, but if we miss this bus, then we might not be able to get home. What made this slightly worse, and this is slightly playing to stereotypes a little bit, is probably about 70% of the people at this hotel were also German, and which meant that most of the people on the bus were German. And if you've ever been to Germany, it is a stereotype, but they are sticklers for timekeeping. Their transport and their railways and everything, that all runs absolutely onto the button. So we also felt a little bit of judgment coming from the contingent.
I don't think the English need any more hits to their reputation.
No,
Sam.
They don't.
We're already down.
We were so late. When we got there, they served breakfast at 8. Basically, when I got there to kind of tell the the driver that we were going to be late. I was sort of a bit of the advanced party. There was someone there already just finishing their breakfast. Like they got up it perfectly in time. They could go down to the buffet and have some breakfast. And there we were, like absolutely sweating in 30-degree heat, having made this massive sprint to get the bus. And then you spend the hour bus ride thinking about, right, what have we forgotten? What have we had to leave behind?
Where's Hugo? Hugo's still asleep in bed.
The hotel room. And I have to say, my son was superb. He loves a crisis. He was like fully in on it. He was like, right, what do I have to do to make this? Like he was like the best behaved he'd been the whole holiday. He just loved the fact that he was given like missions and tasks and right, I have to do this and everything like that. But it was like, you know, I said to Lisa, I said like, just leave me my passport and my wallet and go. As long as I've got those two things, I'll be able to join you at the airport somehow. Just go, get onto the bus. And honestly, like it probably took us until we were through immigration back at Manchester Airport for us to really feel like that horrible sick feeling in your stomach, like when you feel like you're just like eating a rock, finally sort of dissipated. That we felt like, I think it's like,
well, you were still in your pajamas.
Oh, I was still in my pajamas, and but that whole like shoulda, woulda, coulda, like this could have been so much worse.
Oh yeah,
like
the knock-on effect.
Yeah, like my wife waking up when she did was like, that was the latest. Like any later than that, we would have missed our bus and we would just paid for a taxi or whatever. But you know, it was just like one of those horrible feelings where it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe we were those people.
This does remind me of when we used to live together, Sam.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Okay.
About 9 times out of 10, I used to have to wake you up to go to classes in the morning.
Yeah, but it wasn't like, you know, I wasn't missing a transfer. Even though we used to have a little transfer bus, didn't we? Going from campus to campus, I think we did, which I did miss a few times.
I never took that bus. I always walked.
Oh, well, good for you.
There you go. Sam, you were talking about very delicately.
Yeah.
You were very careful of not infringing on or evoking any kind of stereotypical perceptions.
No, absolutely not.
But I think we need to talk about a game that we've held off talking about. That I'm really curious to know if this would be classed as something inherently stereotypical. Now, Dan, you played this game. And straight away, you're on the WhatsApp chat, and
which is usually kryptonite for anything. Like if you want to ensure that no one ever plays anything or reads anything or watches anything that you like or do, then put it in the WhatsApp chat, and it will quickly disappear.
That's where it goes to die.
It'll just sit there. Yeah. And in a short moment, a little bit like me with Triple R, you got both Sam, Pete, and myself to play it over a weekend. That weekend we all played. I played it twice that weekend.
Yeah.
But thank goodness you're here, Dan.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness I'm here, and thank goodness
you're here.
So thank goodness you're here from Cole Supper. One of the key ways, I think I mentioned this before, that I kind of pick out games that I want to play is I read The Guardian, and they have kind of a games section with games reviews, but they don't review many games. It's not really their kind of thing. So they don't review many games. So the games that they do review tend to be more interesting games. They do some of your AAA titles, but a lot of the time they tend to be a bit smaller, and often they tend to be only good stuff. You don't tend to get a lot of stuff that's kind of like 1 or 2 stars. So I'm always kind of keen to see what comes up there. And this game came up, thank goodness you're here. And I'd not heard of it before. And it came up and it was 5 stars. And I was like, okay, let's have a look. And I had a little read of it. And it looked really interesting. It looked funny. It was like £12. It was like a really short, like 3-hour game. And I was like, you know what? This looks really fun. I watched the trailer. This looks really interesting. The artwork looked phenomenal. This kind of really old-fashioned kind of, it's not quite Beano, but it's kind of reminiscent of kind of your Beano kind of dandy, that kind of style of artwork. And it reminded me of something like Cuphead, where the idea with Cuphead is it looked like a classic animation, but you were in control of it. And this had a similar feel. And so just on the basis of that, it just looked really fun. I was like, you know what? It's 12 quid. I'll go for it. And I downloaded it and I played it that night. And it was one of those things where I was about 10 minutes in. And it was at that point I thought, I should probably let the guys know about this. But then I had the exact thought you did about things being put there going to die. And I thought, actually, let me play it for a bit longer in case the initial hit fades quite quickly. Like that thing of kind of like a really something that's really spicy, but actually the spice doesn't last. It kind of dies a death kind of thing.
Mm.
And I don't think we'll go into too much detail because the joy of this, just like with the joy of this is the experience of it.
Yeah.
But not to kind of the Barry Lidl, but the idea of the game is you play this guy who's been sent on a job to meet the mayor of this fictional northern town called Barnsworth, which is basically a fictional version of kind of like somewhere like Barnsley.
Yeah.
And you go there and you're told the mayor can't see you right now. He's probably going to be available in about 45 minutes. Why don't you just head out into the town and come back when he's ready? So you head out into town and you start to come across all these weird and wonderful people. And many of them have all these different stories and there's lots of different conversations that are happening kind of in the background. But a lot of them will, when you speak to them, they'll say, oh, thank goodness you're here. And that's kind of a thing of they've got a task for you to do. And some of them are simple tasks, but they're all kind of surreal and weird. And there's inflections of like Monty Python-esque kind of humor. There's inflections of the Mighty Boosh kind of humor. Like there's all these different really surreal stuff.
I think it's probably important to just state to kind of really at this juncture to really kind of impress upon whoever's listening and doesn't already know about this game that the way you interact with the world is 100% via punching.
Yeah,
and
it's called a slapformer.
Yeah, or a punch and click. Yeah.
Yeah, there are three inputs. You have movement, you have jump, and you have punch or slap. And that is it. And everything is done through that. So there's never a case of trying to work out a kind of a combination of things. If you slap something and nothing happens, then chances are nothing's going to happen with that thing. And just over the course of this kind of game, you just meet all these weird and wonderful characters and they send you on this weird and wonderful journey. And it is bizarre. And you meet different people and you'll see shops with weird names. There is a battle going on between two pie shops. One sells tiny pies, one sells huge pies. And it's so wonderfully joyful in its humor that I just spent the entire time like just laughing out loud. A couple of episodes we talked about the fact of like, oh, I haven't played like a comedy game in ages. I love a good comedy game. And this is kind of one of the best comedy games I've ever played. And I did think as soon as I finished it, I did think like we are in like episode 207. Every 100 episodes we do our top 10. I would be stunned if this isn't in my top 10. It's one of those things I'm like, yeah, this has resonated with me in such a way.
Slam dunk.
Exactly. And that's the thing, when I finished it, because I did kind of, because it is only a short game, so about 3 hours, I did put a message on there and I kind of said to you guys, like, this game, it's something else, it really is. And then you guys kind of slowly kind of jumped on the bandwagon as well. I think you'd heard of it, probably perhaps more so than I had, but you jumped on the bandwagon as well. And I collected like, it literally over a couple of days. And usually, as you say, I put something on there. I mean, I put The Bear on there about 4 times 3 years ago, and still people don't watch it. Within 48 hours, all of us had played it. And all of us had come back saying, yeah, this is a masterpiece.
But I think it's got so much good stuff there that incentivizes you to play it, aside from the hype. It's 12 quid. It lasts about an hour and a half, 2 hours to play. Even if you don't like it, like, it's not going to be too much out of your day to experience what other people are talking about. And I think that's really sweet. Although part of me wishes it was 10 bob.
True.
Yeah.
True. Well, inflation, you get it.
So I played this game, and a bit like RRR, I wanted to play it with somebody else because I wanted to have that vicarious experience of seeing my reaction through somebody else's eyes. and I played it with my wife, who is from the north.
She
I
is.
asked her if she felt seen, and she said, "Yeah, kind of." But she loved it. We were on holiday, and while we were walking around, talking about tin sardines and stuff like that, we were constantly quoting it amongst each other. Tiny Tom's Tiny Pies, for example, or Peens.
Beans.
Not quite beans, not quite peas, but something beautiful in betweens. That was the most common thing we'd quote constantly. Or 10 Bob. And I think that's how a game has a legacy of some sort, really, when it becomes something quotable. Not like a meme.
No, but it's kind of like that whole era of specifically British comedy, like The Fast Show, like Reeves and Mortimer, like Shooting Stars, which I know is another Reeves and Mortimer thing, but it kind of evokes that sort of throwing 100 different ideas at the screen and just seeing and just knowing that one of them will stick. And if you don't like the next joke, then don't worry, because you're not waiting long for another joke to come along.
Yeah. But it also is like that kind of sketch show, because quite often, like The Fast Show, those characters you love, the next episode you're going to return to them, the same characters in a different sketch, and that's what I really like about this. It's not just the case you meet these wonderful people and you don't see them again for the rest of the game. You will often or not be returning back and meeting these people, going, retracing your routes to solve puzzles as you're doing these errands, and some errands are long-term, some are short-term, and you go back and the situation has changed. And that has a comedic effect, but it also has practical effect in terms of gaming you. So, for example, you just keep encountering this person on their driving lesson, and their job really is there to kind of block you from going to certain places at certain times, for example. There's one visual gag that I know, Dan, is probably your favourite, which involves you essentially entering to this person's living room, and you do that like 3 or 4 times. And
my favourite.
Because you're suddenly, oh gosh, I'm back here again. Oh no. And that sense of repetition is like a sketch show.
But I think the reason why, in my mind, this game is really in high esteem in terms of the games I've played this year already, is that it manages to do a very, very special trick, which is, comedy is all about timing. And the thing about a game in which you have inherent agency, it makes comedy games very, very difficult, because to find a way to kind of create that timing is very, very, it is the big challenge. So you either get games like I can't remember the company who make them now, but like Squanch games, like it's the same mind behind Rick and Morty, that kind of humor. And those games, they solve that by basically just endlessly repeating and improvising and going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. There's no real script there. There's no real sort of pushing the player towards a big joke. The jokes are always just happening all of the time, and I find them quite irritating and inane. But what thank goodness you're here does is that it uses the environment and it uses the characters within it to always make sure that you're on the right path and you're always walking, or at least on your way to the next joke, which has been structured and framed very, very beautifully. And I think there's so much that is going on in the world there. There's so much good design and architecture, and both physically, I think, and mechanically, that always makes sure that you're on the right step. So even though the jokes are quick and fast and sort of really rapid fire, you're always in the right place to get them. The tone and the pacing is always exactly where it should be for that joke to really to really make a difference and land. For example, mine and Dan's favourite character, the reason why that works is you're not going to that character 1 second, then the next second, then the third second, then the fourth second. There's always enough time in between going to see that character, which means
kind of forgotten about him.
You kind of forgotten about it, and you don't expect it to be different. And then it's different every time. And then when you know it's different every time, the next time you go to it, you just, how is it going to be different this time? What could possibly have happened? And that's why it works. And it's such an amazing game design in that way to really pull off that trick that I'm not surprised it's only a couple of hours long, because I don't know how you would manage to basically continue that across the course of a bigger game experience. That just really just bowled me over in between bouts of literally laughing out loud whilst playing it. Like, I was just staggered by how you were never lost as in what to do. You would never sort of feel like you're unnecessarily backtracking or doing something useless or worthless or anything. You are always progressing. You're always feeling like you're doing something new and something involved. And even that's an amazing thing. And then to make it funny on top of that, like, it's, incredible.
One thing I actually quite enjoyed doing was, after I'd finished, I looked at kind of the achievements, like the trophies. There was loads of them I hadn't seen. But obviously, as you guys then started playing it, I could see which trophies I'd got against which trophies you got. And there were obviously some trophies that you got that I hadn't, so I didn't know what they were. Then there was one trophy that I got that no one else had got. And there was like an element of me of like, oh, amazing, I've seen this brilliant joke that you guys haven't. So there is kind of, and so in the flip side, I know that there are brilliant jokes there that you've seen that I haven't. Because all these little things, and it wasn't that I've done a task that you haven't, it's literally been, I've slapped a certain thing that you haven't slapped. That's it. And there's a joke has come out away from that. And it was just a really wonderful thing to kind of, for me to know that there is more to the game for you as well to enjoy.
Yeah. I can't wait to play it again.
My holiday was more homebound, visiting one of the many, many wonderful beaches we have in here in the UK. But one of the best things about kind of UK beach holidays is also the arcade that we go to kind of every time with the kids, and like arcade full of like the 2p machines, the like coin pushers. And like, I tell you what, we went to a place called Swanage down near Poole, Bournemouth way down south. And I found the greatest like arcade we've ever found, and it was the most profitable one I've ever found as well. I came away with toys that came out of machine. There was one machine I won the jackpot like 3 times.
What?
And like we came at the end of it, and it spits out tickets, a lot of them, which you then exchange. And obviously, usually it's like, I've got like 100 tickets. You can have a pencil sharpener, that kind of thing. And I think I came out with like 1,400 tickets.
Oh my god!
Like, so we could actually like buy some good stuff. So we bought a board game. Which we bought. It was called Race to Base, which is basically, I think it's known as Race to Base now, but we would have played it as Frustration. With like the dome in the middle.
Yeah, the little
and
pop.
I tell you what, we have played that like with my kind of 6-year-old pretty much every day since. And I tell you what, it's a really good game.
It's a great game with the dice in the centre, so you never lose the dice. You just push in the
just pop
little
them down,
dome, the dome there. Yeah. It's a great game.
And I have to say, every single time we've played it, without fail, it's been an amazing game where like someone has been on the verge of winning and has then like kind of daisy chain, like bam, 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 and suddenly they're back to the start and they're really far behind. And like every single game has turned constantly, so you never know who's going to win. It was really fantastic. And I was just kind of like thinking like that kind of took me back to when I was a child, like those kind of holidays where you would play those old classic board games, your Frustration, Connect 4, all those classic things, battleships, that you might be in like a caravan as a child playing that kind of thing.
No, definitely.
And it's like those classics, like you kind of forget that they are still really, really good. Like there is a formula there that is absolutely timeless.
Oh no, definitely. And I'm wondering if actually, you've got companies like Restoration Games that are kind of really quite big, bringing back classic American games. Like, what tends to happen generally in the UK, if not lots of countries, is they'll just reskin those classic games. They won't really do much to them. They'll just reskin them, like ABBA Monopoly, for example. But for someone to actually, can you imagine what Monopoly would be like now in the current climate, economically speaking? I wonder what that would be like if you were to really kind of rebuild that game from the ground up in 2024.
Well, they did that at time. I remember like versions of Monopoly coming out, and it's like you've got a chip and pin card read, that kind of thing, as opposed to money, that kind of thing.
Oh my gosh!
It's amazing you've had all that stuff.
The last time I was in Poole was in a scout. It was a scout camp years ago, and basically we were camping for 7 days, and everything you own or wear is just smelling of smoke because you've got this fire that you just keep going. And one day we'd just go out to the nearest town and we just have a little day out there, and we'd be left on our own to kind of mooch around and just whatever money we'd got, go and buy sweets or whatever, really. I would generally probably just go to the swim baths and have a shower. But I remember one day, just I was one of the older scouts. We have all these young scouts there as well, roaming around Poole. And it was the day that the Sun's Page Free bus rocked up. And, oh gosh, a juxtaposition of kind of coming out the swimming baths and just seeing like these scouts just swanning, around the Page Free Sun bus was an extraordinary juxtaposition. I'm not going to lie.
So we've all been on our holidays, hollybobs. I've also been playing a game all about going and travelling around the world. Would you like to hear more?
Very much so.
Please.
Let's do it.
Please go ahead.
I admit that I've not played this game as much as I would usually like to before I bring it to the podcast, but that is mainly because the last time I played it, someone I was playing with said, I really want to play this with someone else. Can I borrow it? And I said, yes, you can. And I've not seen it since. So
it wasn't the case they didn't want to play it with you anymore.
Yeah.
No.
I think they've been pestering them time and time again. No, it's fine, Sam. I'll play with someone else. Give it to me.
No, I think they genuinely they loved it so much, and it's a very don't really like to use the term like lightweight, but what I mean is very like rules light, but has a bit of a depth underneath
so like
it.
a family game.
So like a family
almost.
game, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But and it's such an interesting concept that I think it really appeals to lots of people. So this is expeditions around the world, and this is a game that's sort of been around in certain different guises since about 1982, when it was known as Bike About, and then later it was like Wildlife Adventure. Then there was like a National Geographic version of it, and this is basically the newest reprint of it, Expeditions Around the World. And so this is designed by Wolfgang Kramer, and some of you may or may not know Wolfgang's name, but he has got a lot of prestige where it comes to board games. You might have played Six Nimmt.
I played that last week in France.
Yes, I also saw Six Nimmt being played quite a lot while I was away myself in Spain. Very, very popular. And also other things like El Grande and Renature, which we've talked about in this podcast before. Yes. The Princess of Florence, which is another big one of his. So this comes with quite a lot of prestige behind it, and I think that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to play it, because I kind of like Wolfgang Kramer's work anyway. So how expeditions work is that what you're trying to do is to basically get around the world as efficiently as possible, visiting as many different landmarks and different special things around the world as you can in the game. So what you have in front of you is a map of the world, and it has lots of these little green dots on them. And each of those green dots represents a significant landmark, tourist site, ancient monument that you will see in that country that you go to. So, for example, like the Colosseum in Rome, or the
arcades in Swanage.
The arcades in Swanage, places like that, the Victoria Falls, Uluru in Australia, things like that. And what you're trying to do basically on your turn is you have these hand of cards that you keep in front of you. And then you also have these 6 cards, which are kind of public objectives. And what you're trying to do is add arrows to one of 3 different expeditions. And if that expedition visits a place that you're holding in your hand, or visits a place which is a shared objective, you will get that card, and that's a point at the end of the game. So even though there could be 2 of you or 4 of you playing, there are only ever 3 expeditions going across the world. So everyone is sort of with each other and against each other at the same time, if that makes sense, because you're only ever able to explore the world by using one of these 3 different expedition lines. So what that does is a la Race Across the World, the BBC program, if you've seen that, which is superb. It means that you get this blend of adventure and exploration, but you also get this element of competition and the racing and the desire to get to somewhere first amongst everyone on the table. And also, if you've only got 3 expeditions that you're going on, there's also that element of a bit of negotiation and discussion, and also jeopardy, where someone can very, very easily know where you are headed to and jeopardize the expedition that is closest to that location. And the game really does an amazing job of making sure that you're always teetering, all the players around the table are always teetering on that very, very finely balanced line between the wholesome activity of exploring and getting from A to B, but also that line of, or I could really mess with someone else round the table. Like, I really,
if you were so inclined.
If I was so inclined, I could actually use my turn to really make it difficult for that person to go and reach that monument.
So a bit like Ticket to Ride sometimes when you do that. You can do that there.
Very much so. It's got that, but it doesn't feel as cutthroat, because what happens at the start of the game is you have to put down these little tokens for a certain number of cards that you have in your hand. So everyone around the table knows which monuments, which places you are aiming to go to. So immediately from that point on, before the game even begins, you form alliances, you form sort of ideas about places you might want to avoid or places you might want to help someone work towards. And it means that there's nothing that is unintentional, which is why Ticket to Ride is sometimes really frustrating, where you block something but you do it unintentionally, and that feels worse than actually, well, you knew I was always going to go there, and you've actually done something quite clever to make it more difficult for me to then move around it. So, well done you. Because if you do it like in Ticket to Ride, you put down your trains and someone goes, oh, they spent all their turn trying to work up until that point. That's more frustrating than if someone does it actually intentionally in a really weird way. And so Expeditions just kind of carries on until, laying down these arrows, everyone contributing to this wonderful, like, Indiana Jones-esque sort of map at the end, where you've got these wonderful weaving arrows which go from point to point to point around the world. And then when all those arrows are finished, you just count up basically how many places you have visited, and you deduct from that how many places you haven't visited, i.e. the cards left in your hand, and that's it. You have a winner.
Sounds nice. How long does it play, Sam?
So the times that I've played it probably takes about 35 minutes. 40 if
that's nice. Yeah.
Because I was just looking at pictures, and obviously the map itself appears quite big.
It's huge,
in terms of Yeah, so it's quite a big map, and obviously there's lots of lines on there, so it does look quite imposing. So it's interesting that it's only kind of shorter. Obviously, as we've done here, the obvious comparison to be made here is with Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride is a game where you have a geographical map with points across that you have to reach with lines between them. So the similarities are there for everyone to see. Now, obviously, with Ticket to Ride, it's just the fact that they are named places is kind of a moot point, really. It doesn't really mean anything. The fact that you're traveling around the world here, is there any element of the travel aspects from this, or is it? Because I can see cards and stuff that kind of we'll talk about perhaps some of the monuments. Is there any element of it that really enhance the geographical element to it?
Good question. I think that it makes sort of strategizing a bit easier because you can sort of understand the geography of where you're meant to be going. So when you look at your hand of cards, you could get really lucky and have a path that's like, naturally goes from Europe to Asia to Australasia, back round to like South America, and is actually quite nice. Or you could have something that starts in Antarctica, then is South Africa, and then is over in Russia and bounces all around the place. But because you've got this wonderful, like really picturesque map in front of you, it really helps you sort of strategize and plot because you can really see those places on the map. And there's that wonderful bit of like passive learning as well that you do in a game like this, because the map itself looks a bit like one of those big National Geographic maps you had when you were a kid. So even though it is the globe, like the monuments are about 50 times bigger than they should be, and they like pop out the map. Like the Colosseum in Rome takes up the whole of northern Italy because it's just like, just to say like this is what is there.
The arcades in Swanage.
The arcade in Swanage is just like a massive arcade box popping out.
It was a great arcade.
So there is that sort of bit of passive like learning to it as well. Like you feel like you're actually like gaining some sort of knowledge about like the world and the way through. And in terms of like feeling like you're traveling, it does that in another way where, as well as like these green dots that you can go and visit, which represent places and represent points that you can get, you can also go and visit squares and stars. And they will always take you out of your way a little bit. So they will always like represent the longer route round to locations and destinations. But they will give you tickets that provide certain bonuses. And these bonuses allow you to do things like take away an arrow from an expedition and put a new arrow somewhere else. So, which is really great because you could divert an expedition which is heading into Africa where Auntie Sue is quickly going to wrap up one of her points, and you can divert it so it's pointing all the way over to Australia or over to India. Or you can use these tickets to just add another arrow onto the expedition that you were just using, so really extending it to where you want to go or really diverting it from another player. So it feels like when you take the road less travelled, there's some benefits to it as well.
Amazing. And Sam, in 30 minutes, does theme come across? What I mean by that is, one of the things I love when playing games is, even though, yes, I am plotting a route here to get maximum points, to get this route before you do, say, for example, I like to try and establish something thematic about that. Like, I'm going on this wonderful little holiday, this jolly jaunt, and I'm going here now, and then I'm going here, and I imagine when you're when you're traveling to places that maybe you've been before, and suddenly that becomes an interesting trigger for talking points. A little bit like we were at the beginning of this episode, say, for example. Does the game give you space for that? Is it light enough that it gives you those moments to have these kinds of conversations?
Yeah, I mean, there is not, because you're basically picking from 3 different expeditions, you're not really getting much of a theme of a sort of Phileas Fogg-esque like race across the world. You do in a way because you kind of feel like you are the person sort of orchestrating, along with the fellow people around the table, like these 3 different expeditions, and trying to basically manipulate them in a way to make sure they visit the places that you've sort of sidelined. But consequently, you're right to say that the game is light enough and not too sort of plotting and strategic heavy, where people can like look up from their cards and go, oh, I've always wanted to go there, or I've been there, or yeah, I've always, wondered about that kind of place, and read about it on the card and see a picture and learn about it a bit, or feel like they are really going the hard yards in terms of, the places that they're going to visit.
Well, I went on holiday to the canned sardine capital of France.
Hold on. So not the fresh sardine capital of France. We all know that is
the first sardine cannery in France was in this place,
Oh, wow.
Douarnenez.
Is it still there?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they're very proud of it. I went around a boat museum, and there was one whole part of the exhibit where you actually walk. They've basically turned like a giant tin of sardines on its side. They've peeled back the lid with a ring pull, and you kind of walk into it through it. Really, it's incredible.
To be fair, if you had said, "Kate, sardine capital of the world," like, can you explain what you think the museum's going to be like?
Yeah,
like that's probably what my brain would have gone to, like the extreme, and that's the kind of thing that we would have come up with, like the canned sardine door.
The first room is just, here is a sardine. The second room is, here are the boats that we catch them on. The third room is, here is how we can them. And then the fourth room and fifth room and sixth room are pretty much open to whatever, mad sardine stuff you can imagine.
It's very much like the Stations of the Cross in a cathedral.
Oh my God.
But I keeping it on brand just a little bit, I discovered a wonderful board game shop there that actually is called La Sardine en Boîte, which translates as a can of sardines.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely, beautiful, immaculate board game shop, which I went to twice, actually, during my sojourn away. And I got some lovely recommendations, not only for games, but also for what stuff to do in the area, which is really good. But I'm always amazed sometimes where I'll go to cities and there won't be really a board game shop. There'll be a toy shop or a book shop that happens to sell board games. And then I go to this quaint little town, essentially, and there's this incredible board game shop in there with an owner who is incredibly knowledgeable and very passionate about the hobby, recommending me stuff that's coming out, stuff that's available in France but not available yet in the UK. And to have that there, La Sardine en Boîte, was just a real treat. And it's something I always look for when I go on holiday now. I go on Google and I map out places I want to go to, but I always check, I wonder if there's a board game shop here.
Yeah.
So that was a real nice little unexpected treat, really. And other than that, I was on a beach. Sam, were you on a beach?
Oh, yes.
Dan,
Pretty
were
much
you on a beach?
Every day.
I was on a beach. I did go to a beach.
There we go.
Yeah.
We just need Pete to be on a beach right now. He's on holiday last night. He left a couple of days ago. He's on his hollywolls right now. All we need is for Pete to be on a beach, and then the outro.
Then we can put the outro to bed.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's fine. That's a good way to let that fade off into the distance.
Sam, with your knowledge of the world as it is now,
Yes.
Could you point to me on a map where Tasmania is?
There.
Hourly.
Oh, hourly. Tasmania is it's in Australasia.
Yeah.
And I believe Tasmania is isn't it somewhere off the is it somewhere in between New Zealand and Australia? An island in between.
You see, you knew it was an island. I didn't know it was an island.
All right, okay.
Because I was in New Zealand and I've camped on Abel Tasman Beach. This Tasman guy really got around. But I didn't know it was an island. The reason I'm asking is a couple of weeks ago, my partner and I finished a series that's on Amazon Prime At the moment, Dan and I are eagerly awaiting season 2 of Rings of Power when that drops.
Oh, yes.
Mhm.
Time of recording in a couple of days' time. I am very excited, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm very excited as well.
Very, very excited.
And season 4 of Only Murders, a couple of days, time recording.
I'm very excited about that as well.
That's got brilliant reviews. Very much looking forward to that. This is Deadloch, and please don't be put off when you look at the poster.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
if you imagine there's a particular type of crime drama show that has been dramatically influenced by the kind of Scandi noir style. So you think of The Bridge, you think of The Killing.
Yeah.
Many of these have had English remakes being made of them to different degrees of popularity and success. There tends to be a particular pattern, a particular series of tropes, a particular look and feel to them as well. And I was intrigued by this because there are 2 actors in it that I know from Taskmaster. One of them was Madeline Sami, who was in the first series of Taskmaster New Zealand, and the other one was Nina Oyama, who was in the first series of Taskmaster Australia. And I was intrigued by that. And I've also seen Madeline Sami in Our Flag Means Death, season 2, which is a series I love as well. And I thought, that's weird, because this looks to be a kind of a typical drama series or a crime murder mystery series that I'm not into. Because typically, for me, the sorts of murder mysteries I tend to get drawn into are the ones a little bit lighter. Now, what I mean by that is not that the mystery itself is obvious. It's not like Scooby-Doo, where literally it's one of 2 other characters the gang meets.
Yeah.
But what I mean is that it's just not doom and gloom. And Sam, you spoke a few episodes back in relation to when I spoke about the comic 8 Billion Genies, about how real life, verisimilitude, naturalism, humour is there.
Yeah.
It naturally occurs. And the thing that's really interesting about Deadloch, and I'd be really interested to know what you'd make of it, all of you, is that this is very funny, but it is dark, and I think it does a wonderful job of walking that tightrope really, really well. It's only 8 episodes long, and the setup is very similar to what you would have seen in lots of these sorts of series. A body is found on the beach, a small town in an island state of Tasmania, and a local detective has to team up with another detective brought in from the mainland to try and solve this case. And
your classic trope.
it is kind of a classic trope,
Yeah.
but they do some really interesting wrinkles on it. So the body that is found is male, and the creators of this series, Kate McCartney and Kate McLennan, were very clear that they wanted to kind of subvert some of those kinds of tropes, which typically it tends to be a woman found in the forest and wherever it is, somewhere remote. And what's interesting is these creators, they're comedians and writers, and they came up with this series. It took them 8 years to make it, but they wrote it during lockdown. They'd both individually had kids at the same time, and due to COVID restrictions, they were limited in terms of where they could go. So what they would do is they were up in the middle of the night, kind of looking after the kids, and one of them recommended to the other Broadchurch, and she was like, "Oh, Broadchurch. Oh, who's in it? Oh, Olivia Colman. Oh, I saw her in lots of comedy stuff. This is going to be hilarious." Spoilers, it isn't. And they got really into kind of crime shows, and they would basically go down to the play area, because in Australia at this time during COVID, one of its rules was you could picnic outside. They thought, great, let's take a picnic blanket, the kids can play on the play area, and we'll just write these scripts. And that's what they did. So it sounds like a bit of a generalization, but this is almost Broadchurch with gags. And what I mean is, it's not like a laugh a minute, but what it does, which is really interesting, is that the jokes are really funny in the moment, but you won't really remember them afterwards. What you think about is the mystery, and what makes Deadloch really, really good is the mystery is really interesting. It's really gripping.
It's interesting because I remember seeing like a trailer for this and kind of not being really enticed by it, because it did kind of feel like Broadchurch with jokes. And I do find, because I quite enjoy these kind of like more dark murder mysteries kind of thing. I enjoyed Broadchurch when it was on various different kind of, as you say, your Scandi style kind of murder mysteries. And so to put comedy into that, I think is a really fine line to walk down. I think in my mind, you've either got to go without the comedy, or if you're going to put the comedy in there, kind of the gold standard for me is a touch of cloth. And you go all in, and you say, you know what, like there's a murder mystery here. It's all the components of the murder mystery are here, but that is just kind of the skeleton. Like everything else is joke.
Yeah.
When we mention kind of thank goodness you're here, it's joke. That's what a touch of cloth is. And I've always kind of felt like if you're going to do that, you've just got to say, you know what, that's what it is. So when I saw this trailer, I was kind of a bit kind of like, you know what, I don't know if this would work.
But a touch of cloth's a great example, Dan, because it's an inversion. A touch of cloth, I remember the gags. I don't remember the mystery. I just quote Julia Ryan, so it's on my tablecloth. Whereas this, I remember the mystery. And then one day I'll rewatch it again, and then the gags will appear. But they're not like gags in the sense that we may think about them in a kind of thank goodness you're here, which I love, obviously, as we talk. Like, for example, when the body is discovered, it's discovered by two teenagers, and they're on the beach. I think they're smoking weed on the beach. And one of them calls them over and says, look, and they point at the body, and the other one is so startled she drops her spliff and it lands on the penis of the dead body. And they're like, and she just has to try and flick it off. It's not funny for those two, but it's funny for us as the viewer. And the fact that it's just not something that typically happens. Usually in a crime genre, somebody sees the body. If it's a woman, they tend to be screaming inanely for some strange reason. And then it cuts away. And then you've got the male police officer going under the tape into the crime. What have we got? This lingers, thinking, okay, what do they do now? They found this body. We just might as well talk while the police turn up. What do we talk about? There's this body in the middle of on the beach there. And it's really interesting that the two lead detectives, played by Madeline Sami, who I've spoken about before, who plays this out-of-town cop, Eddie Redcliffe from the mainland, who really put a lot of people off in the first two episodes. And they are quite brisk and in your face, but they're paired beautifully with Kate Box's character, Dulcie Collins, who's a very calm, very placid, very by-the-book person. And unlike that kind of setup where the small-town cop knows very little, it's the small-town cop that knows the book and follows the law and has a really good understanding of what's going on here, but they are held back by the fact that they are a small-town cop. And just the stuff that happens around them is just great, this kind of dynamic between these two kind of people. But some standout performances here, genuinely a mystery where there is a reveal pretty much in every episode that keeps you guessing. And me and my partner were thinking, oh my gosh, I wonder what this means. And to kind of, it's been a while since I've genuinely had a murder mystery, probably not since something like Only Murders, where you're generally, when you're watching it with somebody else, talking, okay, I think it could be them.
Yeah.
But this is a show that might be wanting to subvert that. So maybe it's not them. I'd be really disappointed if it's them, because that'd be so obvious. But what if it is them? And that's like a double or triple bluff. And you've got this full range of suspects you can choose from. And what makes this stand out a little bit more also is that it has some very interesting perspectives here, tackling topics such as feminism and post-colonialism in a manner that doesn't feel tacked on. And it feels really intrinsic, not only to the storytelling, but also to its role as what they've dubbed a Tassie noir, which I love. So I can highly recommend it. 8 episodes, and there is going to be a season 2, and I cannot wait.
Brilliant. I'll also recommend to you like Mr. In Between, which
yes,
you can
you've
watch.
Spoken about that before, Sam. Is that on Prime as well?
No, this is on Disney Plus, I think.
Yes, I've seen it advertised.
But it's that very, very dry Australian, dark, black, like the blackest of black humor.
Gosh, yeah.
Where basically it's a story of a a hitman, but what you actually see mostly is like the in between when he's being a hitman. So he's got a daughter, he's got a relationship, he's got an estranged ex-wife or ex-partner that he has to deal with and do all the the day-to-day stuff. He's got a brother who is unwell and dealing with their own difficulties. He's also trying to date, as well as being like a hitman in between. And I've always loved that kind of element of that sort of type of black humor, very sort of Coen Brothers-esque,
Very
like
much
Oh
so,
Brother, Where Art
yes.
Thou, Fargo, all those kind of things where they are very, very
Yeah, that's a perfect example, actually. Yeah,
dramatically
Lebowski.
serious comments. Big Lebowski, like the Coen Brothers are kind of masters of really getting out the humor from natural things and not dealing.
That kind of absurdism of it.
Well, yeah, I guess it is the absurdism of it, isn't it? Because like, when you watch things like Broadchurch, and I think there's, a place for things like that, it's stripped away all of the, absurdity of life. Like life is not that dour and dark 100% of the time. It just isn't. The difficult thing is actually trying to find the little bits of, grey in between where things are just, funny.
Yeah, where people might be going through a difficult time, they still find times to laugh, and things can still make them laugh in that.
Or funny things will just
They
happen.
can still happen.
Yeah. Just like as Kris mentioned, like in that scenario, just they find a dead body and it's not cut to cop turning up straight away. It's like that is not an immediate thing that happens. Like the police don't just turn up immediately. Like, what do you do? And there is humor and there is drama within that situation. So I love things that explore that mystery in between. Is a sterling, superb version of that. The Bear as well, I think, is a comedy. It is hilarious. It is funny, but it is very, very black, dark humor.
Yeah.
Which does exactly the same sort of thing. So I can definitely see me enjoying this kind of thing, where it is that idea of, there are a lot of people swearing at each other quite a lot of the time, and it seems like it's deathly serious, but then something quite absurd and silly will happen, and it's hilarious, and it manages to get away with it. But that only happens in the best of the best kind of stuff. So I'll definitely check this out.
Did you know that obviously in the UK, when we apply a certificate to films, I'm just thinking about the C word in relation to Deadloch. Did you know that in films that we apply a 12A to, you're allowed one use of the F-bomb?
Oh yeah, I knew that.
Yeah. And I was just wondering, looking at a list of films that are 12A, if we had to introduce an F-bomb in there, where would be an optimum place for this?
So I'm thinking a Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Return of the King's in there, Sam. So
Return of the King's in there. Well, I definitely know there's one moment.
Is there?
Probably if Sauron, when he sees the army of the dead coming, just looks at that and just goes.
So I was. Oh, thanks. I'll get the bleep button out.
I debated whether to say it. But
I was going to say Return of the King. When Sam comes home, it's the last line of the film. Just goes, "Well, I'm back."
So I was just going to go along for Fellowship, and just the entrance of the troll. I mean, like, oh,
they have a cave troll.
I don't remember this place.
Yeah. Always follow your nose.
What are the good 12?
I've got a list here. There is the Inception.
Dream a little bit bigger, darling.
Captain America: The First Avenger. I could do this all day. The Dark Knight. Some men just want to watch the world burn. Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith.
Oh yes.
The younglings.
I have the fucking higher ground. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
You're a fucking wizard, Harry.
Oh my God. One thing I did forget to mention, if you're on the fence about Thank Goodness You're Here and you're on Steam, you can download their first game, Cole Supper's first game, which is called The Good Time Garden, for absolutely nothing. And it's just as incredible.
Good
amazing
shout.
jokes. And you'll get a very good idea in terms of both in animation style, gameplay, and humour, whether Thank Goodness You're Here is for you.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, I'll tell you what, Sam, the Marrow song will be making it onto the Spotify playlist, definitely, because it basically stayed in my head rent-free for the duration of my trip away.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
If you
No, definitely. And that is essentially a little series of playlists we put together which relates to stuff we've spoken about. And you can find the links to that Spotify playlist in the show notes because it's a little bit fiddly to get to otherwise. For all your different kind of moods. I was checking in the Strong Brew playlist. We have over 100 tracks on there now.
Wow.
It's about 4 or 6 hours long, that playlist alone, just the Strong Brew stuff. But if you want something a little bit more chilled, you might want chamomile or iced tea. Thank Goodness You're Here will also be on our Steam curation page.
It will. Where you can see all the games, all the video games that we've ever talked about on the podcast. So if you just follow us on Steam, basically you'll just get notified. Do you get notified? I don't know. Don't think so. But you'll just be able to find basically all the games we've ever spoken about on there, basically. If it's on our curated page, it's a good game. And you'll be able to, look back into the podcast history to hear us talking about it if you want a bit more information. And the same with our page on BGG. You can follow us there and basically see all the board games or episodes where we've talked about a board game on and be able to hear a bit more about why we think that board game is super ace. What else is there? Oh, the email address, stayinginpod@gmail.com. We're on Instagram as well. I recently posted up a little bit about a games night I had, which is quite extensive actually. We got through quite a lot. So there's pictures on there of us playing After Us and Far Away and Dumb Questions to Ask Your Friends, Happy Salmon, Agatha Christie's Death on the Cards.
Great game.
Yeah, fantastic. What an evening that was. Amazing. Yeah, and that's at Staying in Pod. You can find that pretty easy.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully we'll see Pete on the beach soon. He's already sent us some pictures of his
He's
from
there.
abroad.
He's not quite on the beach yet.
Not yet, no.
He's on resort.
He struggles, our boy Pete, to do the relaxing stuff. So hopefully he's doing his best to get there.
Yeah.
But I'll see you on the
See you on the beach.